Okay, as people are coming in, we'll get started. And I know people are joining us from all over the world. Nicola in Thailand. I'm in Brisbane, and what's custom here in Australia is I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of our land. And in Brisbane or Meejin, it's the Turrbal and Jagera people. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Now, this is a very popular session, and I see why. Emotional intelligence on even the research that Skills Development Group has done ourselves is the fourth top skill for the skills of the future. You can see that there on the list, and this is some research that we did earlier last year through UCLA. So, very popular topic, and really excited to have Nicola here today to talk to us about it. So I can go into Nicola's bio, but everyone can see that, and I'm sure everyone's read that as they've registered for the webinar. So the one thing I do want to give you a little bit of background is to how Nicola goes about creating great environments, because I feel like it's about EQ is about filling your bucket, but also filling other people's buckets. So a few years ago, similar timing around Christmas time or lead up to Christmas time, Nicola did some training for one of our customers, and just show you a short video of what she got her class to do.
I'm joining. Okay, go. Words are right there. 1, 2, 3. On the third day of training, Sylvia taught to me 12 problem statements, 11 members, 10 broken stories, 9 persona types, 8 kinds of context, 7 customer touch points, 6 user journeys, 5 different chats, 4 desirable solutions, 3 estimates of value, 2 partial teams, and a roadmap that has no dates.
I like to call that one the 12 days of product ownership, but you're going to have a very fun session with Nicola. As always, the chat's open. Please ask questions. Please interact. I know Nicola's got some polls for us to fill in, so get that mouse button clicking away as you go, and fully engage in the session. Nicola, over to you.
All right, thanks, Phil. Sorry, Daniel. Sorry. Just double checking. I'm obviously a bit nervous. I don't do webinars every day. So just double checking. I can't see everybody. Is that the supposed?
Yeah,
okay.
correct. Yeah.
All right. So I'm talking to Daniel and myself, but I know you're all here. So I'm super chuffed that you've made time to join us today. So thanks very much in exploring how emotional intelligence can transform not just your leadership, but also your ability to deliver business value and drive strategic outcomes. So let me actually start with a quick story. I was chatting to a colleague who was a technical expert, is still a technical expert. I don't think you lose that. And at one point, he asked me for my input on a solution. And I casually replied, I don't care. Meaning I trusted his expertise. But at that moment, I noticed that his posture changed, his back went up, and he looked visibly uncomfortable. And thankfully, I caught the shift and I said, I think I've offended you. Can you share what's going on? And he told me the phrase, I don't care, felt really dismissive to him, whereas I had meant it, I trust your judgment. And so that moment really stuck with me because it highlighted how emotional intelligence impacts everything from stakeholder relationships to customer satisfaction, business outcomes, and team performance and family dynamics. But teams are also where the heart of all of it is. So it's understanding and managing our own emotions while really being attuned to others. And it's about creating an environment where people feel seen, they feel heard and valued, and that directly translates to better collaboration and innovation. So it was quite funny that Daniel pulled out the video of the training a few years ago. Thankfully, they did feel safe to, blare their voices in the class because there were actually other participants. So it wasn't just them as a group singing to me. There were other tables involved. But looking at my example, These sort of challenging moments happen every day. So imagine you're leading a meeting and someone goes quiet. Emotional intelligence helps you pause and say, I notice you've gone quiet. Do you have any concerns we haven't addressed? Or you give feedback and the other person gets defensive. So instead of pushing back, emotional intelligence helps you say, I see I have upset you. Can you help me understand what's going on? Or somebody says, sure, if that's what you want. But their tone makes you really second guess yourself. So emotional intelligence helps you think, what might they be feeling? And how can I address this constructively? And so these are the real challenges that we deal with at work. And it's not about technical skills. So today isn't just about better relationships. It's about how emotional intelligence drives business results and also customer value. So, so what I hope that you'll walk away with from this session is really understanding the science behind thriving. So discover why creating more positive experiences is essential for productivity and stronger relationships. And also how emotional intelligence helps you as leaders achieve this balance. Also, walking away with practical strategies and techniques to enhance your self-awareness, build empathy and communication skills, equipping you to handle these stresses and strengthen your connection with your teams, with peers, and stakeholders. Also learning how emotional intelligence can help you create the psychological safety and foster purpose-driven, high-performing relationships across your organization. And lastly, getting insights on integrating emotional intelligence into everyday leadership and also to stay focused on delivering value, both to customers and to the business, while keeping your teams, your stakeholders, and yourself engaged and resilient. So let's do a quick poll. Let me launch this poll for us, if I can find it now. Oh, Daniel, my polls have gone from my view. Are you able to see and help me launch the poll? Great. Thank you very much. So what challenges, specific situations resonate most with your current challenges? Is it managing difficult conversations, reading and responding to team dynamics, handling resistance or pushback, or building trust across different work styles? So go ahead and you can select one or more. I think it's multiple choice. And then we'll give you a couple of minutes or maybe a minute. And then Daniel, I'll just ask you to help share the results. So that should display in Zoom. I guess you can also see how many people have voted, right?
Yeah, the results are coming through. So I think we'll end the poll now. That should have given everyone enough time to vote. So the highest ranking, the highest one voted was building trust across the different work styles with 59%. Second, handling resistance or pushback at 56%. Managing difficult conversations was 47%, and reading and responding to team dynamics, 31%.
All right. Wow. Those results are fascinating because they reflect the exact challenges I see across the industries. So maybe, yeah, on the chat, are there any other situations and challenges that we kind of haven't, these are pretty broad, that you've noticed? I encourage you to use the chat if you like. Be good to see what else is out there. I couldn't list everything. I don't see anything come on the chat. Can we assume we're broad-based challenges good enough?
The chat is disabled. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Caitlin. So yeah, add in to the Q&A session.
All
So
right.
one person's put in a new leader, new context, established team who don't welcome change.
Yeah, that is, I'm actually just been coaching someone that's battling with teams responding to change. Um, any other any other challenges or situations you notice?
Uh, no others coming
All
in.
right,
Yeah, Nicola?
great. So thanks for that. Um, so today, we're going to focus on how EQ addresses these and sets you up for greater impact. So before we dive into tools for building emotional intelligence, let's just explore how the brain impacts the way we think, the way we feel, how we respond, and how we respond under pressure. So I'm not a neuroscientist, so please bear with me. There are some fancy names for these, but I'm going to just stick to the basics. So at the core, we have the survival brain. So this part of the brain is about instinct. It's where our fight or flight reactions come from, and it helps us avoid danger and quickly react to threats, which was great when we are running away from predators. But in today's workforce, it can actually work against us. Under stress, the brain takes over, making us reactive, defensive, and focus on survival rather than collaborating or problem solving. And so this is where low emotional intelligence often shows up. So next we have the middle brain or the emotional brain. And so this is where our emotions come to life, and it evaluates whether something feels safe or threatening and triggers reactions like fear, excitement, or joy. And it also is where it's where we form those social bonds and process emotional cues. However, when we're overwhelmed or we're stressed, this brain can overreact, leading to impulsive and emotionally charged discussions or decisions. And so for leaders, this is where being aware of emotional triggers becomes really crucial for maintaining balance and building trust. And so finally, we have the thinking brain. And this is the part of the brain that actually sets humans apart. It's responsible for the rational thinking, the creativity, and problem solving. And when we operate from this part of the brain, we can approach challenges with calm, curiosity, and empathy. And this is where emotional intelligence lives, helping us regulate our emotions, respond thoughtfully, and lead with clarity and intention. So just have a think about a recent moment when you were triggered or defensive. So which part of your brain do you think was in charge? And so now imagine responding to that same situation from your thinking brain. So with calm, curiosity, and empathy. So what might have shifted? And so let me give an example. Imagine, someone hasn't responded to an email or a message that I feel quite important. Um, my reptilian or survival brain could sort of mull over it the whole day, be really pissed off and annoyed, and might even distract me from being productive and taking action on productive things. Right. So is pain good for you? So typically, if we had the chat, people would go, yes, no, yes, no. So let me answer that for us. So negative emotions like reactiveness and defensiveness is actually helpful, but only for 1 second. It's like an alert signal. So when you put your hand on a hot plate, you notice the pain and you take it off immediately. Otherwise, you'll do damage. So staying in negative emotion hurts your ability to see clearly, to respond with empathy, curiosity, creativity, and also laser-focused action. So my example of being frustrated over someone not calling could cloud my whole day by being really pissed off and really not helpful to me. So if I move to the thinking brain, I could be more empathetic and more possibly come up with a solution as to, how I can then contact this person if it was really important. So a little bit more of the brain in action. So our brains are made up of billions of neurons, and these are like tiny messengers that send signals through the brain. And these neurons communicate through connections called synapses. So I like to reframe the survival brain a little bit differently, bringing in some concepts from positive intelligence. It's called PQ. And this is actually a large aspect that I bring into my coaching. And so just for reference, positive intelligence, or PQ, is a concept developed by Shirzad Chamine. He's a Stanford lecturer and executive coach. And PQ refers to your ability to handle life's challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset, leading to the SAGE, which I'll introduce, or thinking part of the brain, to respond to challenges with clarity, creativity, empathy, instead of being hijacked by these saboteurs, which represents the negative thoughts. So remember, saboteurs is that survival region of the brain. And so the more we use certain thought patterns, like focusing on negativity, those triggers that are happening at work, the stronger those connections become. And so that's why our brains naturally focus on the negative. It's a learned behavior, the survival mode, that's been reinforced over time. And so if our lives are super busy and stressed, we're always in this survival mode. And because this is a default way of thinking, it's like we've actually built this highway to our saboteurs. It's done through years and years of overuse. So imagine just working this arm, the muscle growing, versus not working this arm, being quite underdeveloped and thin. So that's what we've done with our survival saboteur brain. And so let me share an interesting fact. So research shows that to truly thrive, so thrive, what does thrive mean? Being creative, love life, motivated, innovative, all those positive things that go with thriving, resilient. So the interesting fact is we need 3 positive experiences for every 1 negative. And so this research comes from Barbara Fredrickson. And so just let that sink in. In a typical workday, are you and your teams experiencing more positive experiences than negative ones? Is your bucket full or empty? And to be realistic, when you're juggling tight deadlines, shifting priorities, hybrid work, negative experiences like stress, conflict, and miscommunication can easily outweigh the positive. So how do we tip the balance? So just like we've built a highway to our saboteurs through years of overuse, we can shift and build a new highway, I'm calling it a highway, to the sage part of the brain. And this is a totally different region of the brain. It's the prefrontal cortex. And that part of the brain handles challenges with calm, curiosity, and empathy. And this is where emotional intelligence sits. It helps us thrive under pressure and respond appropriately. And this does actually link to mental fitness, because developing this part of the brain does take some mental muscle. But so imagine facing an unrealistic deadline. A leader operating from the saboteur or survival region might react by micromanaging or showing some frustration, which only increases team stress. Now imagine that same leader using their sage brain. They might pause and say, this is a tough situation. How can we tackle this together? So this simple shift reduces the tension and helps the team focus on finding solutions. And so when leaders tap into their EQ and they operate from their sage brain, they're better positioned to understand their team, understand their stakeholders, and customer needs, which positions them to drive strategic outcomes. So it's good all round. So think about your own team and how you see daily pressures triggering your saboteurs, that survival brain, which remember is a default response, and also how we trigger each other's saboteurs. So we affect each other. And what might shift if you and your team like approach these challenges from the sage brain? So I see we have a question.
Yes, Nicola. So we've got chat working now, Nicola, so you can interact. And there was a question from Lucy. What is the name of the person who uncovered the information about 3 positive experiences to every 1 negative experience?
Okay, good question. So her name was, I'm just going to change my slide, Barbara Fredrickson. Yeah, and I just got a name because being nervous, I forget names. So Barbara Fredrickson, she wrote Positivity Ratio, or has brought up the concept of positivity ratio. Good, thanks. I knew I had to fact check and make sure that I had people's names in case questions like this were asked.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, what are the signs of low EQ? So now that the chat is open, yeah, maybe I invite you, not maybe, I do invite you to, put in the chat, what have you noticed are signs of low EQ? Are you feeling a bit shy?
Why everyone's putting that in the chat, Nicola, there was a couple of answers to the previous question, and I really like what Sharon had to say. It's difficult to read the room when running a virtual meeting.
Good point.
You're in the center of it. There's the comments coming through now.
Okay. So yes, being flippant. Someone who can't read the room, love that. Defensiveness, outbursts and tantrums. Well, seen a few of those. Constant negativity, self-centeredness, love these. Blaming others. So some really interesting and relatable signs. I think we've all come across them. So let me share a story about a program lead I worked with. Let's call her Anna. And she was managing a massive high stakes program. And she actually had this incredible ability to secure funding and get support from her senior leaders. That was her talent. However, her leadership style was was very passive aggressive. And this caused significant challenges within her team. So what poor EQ looked like in her leadership, and I think the things on the chat summarize this quite nicely. So in meetings, she was often command control mode, cutting off discussions and dismissing other points of view. She would also bring her frustrations from previous meetings into current meetings, creating a super tense atmosphere. And while she expected people to speak up and share their perspectives, her demeanor discouraged dialogue. And so she actually became quite offended when people didn't contribute, but they just really shut down under her leadership. And so the result is that people stopped responding. Collaboration was kind of like at a zero, and contractors left the program at an alarming rate. And despite her skill of securing resources, the program faced constant challenges and disruptions because of this high turnover and lack of alignment within the team. So she actually did get a coach, and after working with a coach specifically on her emotional intelligence, she made some intentional changes to her leadership approach. And so there's hope there, and this is what signs of high EQ look like. And a lot of this is taken from Daniel Goldman's Emotional Intelligence. So, and it didn't happen overnight. So, so what happened practically is she started meetings by asking, how is everyone doing? And are there any blockers to tackle? And she resisted the need to direct how blockers should be resolved. And instead of bringing frustration from one meeting to the other, she practiced pausing, and resetting her mindset before she engaged with the team. She also actively encouraged dialogue by saying, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Your perspective is important. And she actively had to manage her need to be directive. And when she noticed tension, she would ask, is there something I'm not seeing here? And when mistakes were made, she also took about accountability for her tone. And she said, I might have come across too harsh earlier. Can we revisit this together? Um, and, yeah, it took a few months, but the change was really amazing. The team actually started collaboration from zero, started to increase. People were being more open. And also contractor turnover significantly decreased. And the program started running smoother. So as a leader, she discovered that by creating an environment where people felt respected and valued, they were much more willing to share ideas and stay committed to the program's success. And then directly related to that, the business impact was clear. So better engagement led to faster decision making, more innovative solutions, and stronger customer relationships. And so this is an example where emotional intelligence works in real life. And so breaking it down into Daniel Goldman's aspects. So and how it shows up. So Anna recognized that her frustrations from previous meetings was carrying over and negatively impacting her current interactions. So learning to pause and reset her mindset demonstrates a high level of self-awareness. So that's the foundation to emotional intelligence. And asking questions like, is there something I'm not seeing here? And I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. Your perspective is important. Also demonstrates her shift to understanding and also valuing others' viewpoints. So this is a critical aspect of building empathy and also creating that trust and rapport. Also by acknowledging when she was too harsh and taking accountability for her tone, she showed that she was able to regulate her emotions. And this practical adjustment highlights that leaders can create a safe environment or a safer environment for their teams. So Anna stepped back from being overly directive and created a space for the team to be to own their solutions. And that highlights that relationship management aspect. So from being from being overly directive and creating a space for the team to be creative. And this shows how emotionally intelligent leaders move from command control to creating a more collaborative environment. And so if you think about EQ in the context of today's workplace, with highly diverse teams, we're working across generations, cultures, time zones, and we're navigating a hybrid of environments with rapidly shifting priorities. So emotional intelligence really helps us bridge the gaps and connect with people in ways that build trust and collaboration. And let's not forget, creating more positive experiences than negative. So that 3-2-1, super important.
Nicola, a question on the self-awareness piece. I can imagine a leader to become self-aware of that being the biggest hurdle for the leader to take those actions. How does someone get over that hurdle of actually revisiting how they've been acting and how people are responding to their actions and words and start moving through and showing higher signs of high IQ?
Oh, so I've got some tools for you to share that can help you create that self-awareness. But actually, that's a very good question. So one of the things I've noticed in coaching is people can become aware, but that awareness needs to shift to action. So and so that's where that I mentioned mental fitness. If you want to make intentional changes, you actually have to practice these things. So that's self-awareness. I have a tool for us, but it's not something that's going to come easy. But good question. Are we okay to Yeah,
I've got
I'll
another
share it
question.
inside.
David's asks, and I guess this might be the way the slides presented, but is this suggesting that you need to do the first one to move on to the second, um, and so on in the process?
So, well, as I said earlier, so self-awareness is the foundation. So yes, they are kind of sequential. So when you have self-awareness, then you have awareness of others. So we call this congruence. So being self-aware, aware of others, and aware of your environment. So yeah, I think in order to encourage collaboration, so having self-awareness, being aware of others, which is that empathy, and then being able to regulate your emotions, going, oh my God, I've offended this person, or being able to regulate your emotion or this person's offended me, regulate your emotions so you respond appropriately, then leads to, open collaboration and constructive. So there is kind of a sequence. So good question. Thanks for that, David. Does that answer it?
I think so.
Great. I have another poll for you. So let me see. Yeah, Daniel, if you wouldn't mind launching that poll for us. So what leadership behaviors do you most want to shift?
Okay.
So is it reactive decision making, your communication style, meeting management, or your stress response? So as you're doing this, every time I leave over, so living in Asia, it's like hot, cold, aircon, fan, aircon, fan. So I'm trying to find the happy medium. All right, I'll be curious to see, what behaviors you're seeing showing up and would love to shift.
Okay, I think the voting seems to have slowed down. So if I share the results, can you see those results?
Yep. Yep. Okay, excellent. All right, stress response. That's a really big one. So 52%. How do we respond to stress? So and then the next higher ranking is our communication style, like that. Then reactive decision making and meeting management. So thanks for participating. I think so. I'm going to share some practical tools on how you can sort of shift some of these stresses in your behavior and apply to your leadership style. But yeah, I'm pausing on the stress responses, and that is pure survival mode. And stress is an absolute killer. It affects digestion, it affects sleep, it creates brain fog. So yeah, and it effectively my husband calls it the bus driver. When we're highly stressed, our bus driver takes a break, and the bus kind of goes out of control. So stress is a big one to manage. So I'm hoping some of these tools will help you. But I think a point to remember is moving from awareness to action. So these are going to require some practice, and I have a 30-day challenge for you. So I'm going to help you put these things into practice. So a simple emotional regulation tool that'll help you pause and reflect before any challenging situation, or before customer meetings or stakeholder presentations, or when you're dealing with family. It's called a 30-day traffic light check-in. So read, stop and reflect on what's your emotional state. So think about this is about your self-awareness. As I mentioned, the foundation of EQ. So recognize and name your emotions helps you pause instead of overreacting or reacting impulsively. So identifying your emotional state lets you step out of this autopilot, this survival saboteur mode, and take control of your responses. And leaders with strong self-awareness are more likely to respond thoughtfully, especially in high-pressure situations. Then yellow. Think about what's triggering this response. This step reflects that social awareness and self-reflection, digging deeper into the why behind your emotions. Understanding triggers help you identify patterns and separate the problem from the emotional reaction. And a leader who can recognize triggers in themselves and others create a space for empathy and more constructive conversations. And then green. What's your desired outcome? So this also ties back to self-regulation, but also to relationship management. Those pillars in Daniel Goldman's emotional intelligence. And so this helps you focus on solutions rather than staying stuck in reaction mode. So this step helps you move to a reactive state, to a proactive, intentional mindset, allowing you to approach challenges with clarity and with purpose. And leaders who focus on desired outcomes inspire their team to align with the bigger picture and work more collaboratively towards the goal. And this is a low-effort tool that can be used anytime. So, with my first tool, Daniel, did that kind of help with a tip?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good way to think about how you're acting to the situation at this point in time. Thank you.
And to put this in action, we've got to want to change, right? So this is not going to work for somebody that doesn't want to change. So I think what happens is through feedback, either from colleagues or peers, you start to get this feeling, hey, there's something within me that might need to change. So for somebody who doesn't want to change, this might not help. So you need some sort of feedback, continuous feedback to go, hey, maybe there's something that's going on here. And then this is a helpful tool for you to become more socially aware.
Yeah, and someone just actually asked about the recording, and yes, there'll be a recording in the slides after the session. But they were really keen to say this session to their leader. And it's often very difficult to go to your leader and say, hey, you might need to think about how you're reacting to situations, etc. So that's a challenge I'm sure a lot of people dialing into this session is trying to overcome.
So that's a really good point. And I'm going to share another tool for you that might be helpful for you to bring to leaders. So this elevates.
Practice this, Nicola.
Huh?
It's like we practice this.
I know. So I approached it from the whole leadership side, but very good point. How do we, how do we bring this up and elevate our leaders' EQ? So this tool, the Real Conversation Framework, helps elevate difficult conversations for opportunity, for collaboration and value creation. And so there's 4 strategic steps. So reflect. Naturally state observations without judgment. So I've got some examples, but then Daniel, I'm going to bring in that other example. So with customers, maybe it would be saying, I've noticed some hesitation when we discuss the project timeline. Or with stakeholders, I've noticed the energy shift during our resource allocation. Or with team members, I've noticed the energy shift during our planning sessions. To a leader, you could say, I notice you have high pressure demands and so you're empathizing with, leaders don't set out to be difficult from the start. Something is triggering from above. So I noticed that you've got a lot of challenges and stress on your plate. So building that empathy towards your leader. Then explore. So invite a deeper perspective sharing. So with customers, you could say, help me understand your concerns about our delivery approach. Or with stakeholders, help me understand your priorities so we can better align our strategy. And with team members, help me experience the challenges our changes the changes creating in our processes. And yeah, for leaders, you could say, you know, help me understand what your priorities are, so that, we can align on what we focus on. Then acknowledge, validate the experiences by demonstrating active listening. So it's quite interesting, actually. So when you look at it from a bottom up or top down, when you actively listen and use language and body language that, creates that connection. So I hear your concern about risk management, or I understand the pressure you're under to deliver results, or with teams, I recognize the impact that this is having on us as a team. So that does break down barriers also with leaders, because they're feeling kind of alone and under pressure. So that also validates, gives them some validation. And then lastly, link. So co-create solutions to establish like very clear next steps. So with customers, what if we redesigned the timeline to address your concern? Or for stakeholders, what if we created a shared dashboard, to track our progress? Or for the team, what if we, establish some weekly checkpoints to stay aligned or to tackle issues? And with leadership, you could also say, what if we, and put in that suggestion that will help your leader achieve their sort of strategic or their priorities, but also help you as a team, align with them. And then following on from that, you can really go into practical, what does that mean in terms of shift with the team? So you're indirectly coaching your leaders, stakeholders and team members to to think differently. Whereas if a leader is sort of coming down with this top-down command control approach, and you consistently practice this framework, something will shift. So actually, I'm sorry, I drew this for someone else. It's a terrible drawing, and I've got some scribbly notes on it. But the reality is, there we go. So there's this larger circle of everyone else. We cannot change that. We cannot change our leaders, but there is us, and that is where we have direct control. So sorry for that. I thought it was helpful. So we can only change our response in order to influence our environment or other people. So this framework is very powerful because it de-escalates tension and also creates this shared ownership, and is practical and adaptable to a variety of settings. So whether you're helping customer concerns, aligning stakeholder expectations, addressing team challenges, it's really about creating that psychological safety for honest dialogue, which keeps everyone focused on delivering value. Right, so last tool, and then I've got a challenge for you. This is a meeting temperature check. So it's a very quick reflective tool for you to gauge your emotional and collaborative, not only yours, but the emotional and collaborative environment of the meeting. So it makes sure that everyone in the room feels heard. So remember my example with Anna. So bringing her frustrations into a previous meeting, into her current meeting from a previous meeting. A lot of agile teams do this check-in in their meetings. So it's really important to ask, what's the energy here? So this encourages that self-awareness, which is that first step in emotional intelligence. What's their mood? What's their emotional space? Are they in a space to contribute, make decisions? Sometimes, maybe they're not. Maybe there's, challenges at home that need to be resolved, and they're just not they can't be present, and we need to acknowledge that. Another good question to say is, who haven't we heard from? So this ensures inclusivity and also invites input from quieter team members who might be hesitant to speak up. Like, are we missing any critical perspectives? And then lastly, what needs to be said? So this helps you identify those unspoken concerns or assumptions or potential roadblocks that could really undermine the collaboration. And it's really being brave to call out that elephant in the room. So yeah, thinking around, what is not being said as well. And actually, this will only really work if you've created a safe environment with emotional intelligence and you're shining EQ. So out of these tools, I wonder which of these resonate with you. So maybe just a challenge to remember it's about building muscle. So how do we make some of these things stick? So I've got a 30-day challenge for you to help you put this emotional intelligence into action. So remember, big changes start with small intentional steps. When you want to run a marathon of 42 Ks, you're not going to do that day one. You're going to have to do 2 Ks, 5 Ks, 8 Ks, until you build up. So small steps. And this 30-day challenge is really designed to help you build habits that strengthen your emotional intelligence over time. And each week just focuses on one simple tool or concept that we've covered today. And hopefully by the end of 30 days, you'll see how these practices can transform not only your leadership, but your relationships with your leaders and your peers and stakeholders, and therefore also your impact. So week 1, try using the traffic light check-in before team or stakeholder engagements or engagements with your leaders. Week 2, see if you can apply the real framework in any feedback discussions, leadership discussions with your leaders, or customer interactions. Week 3, try that meeting temperature check-in, in team meetings or, strategic discussions. And then week 4, sort of share, what's it called? Pay it forward. So teach one of these tools to somebody else. So last poll. What will you focus on first? Yeah, so we're not talking about tools because I've got a 30-day challenge, but yeah, would it be difficult conversations, team dynamics, meeting effectiveness, or personal triggers? And remember, one of the challenges is those stress responses. That was our highest sort of behavior that we were seeing.
Got those results, Nicola?
Sure. Close on at Thai is personal triggers and team dynamics. So yeah, really thanks. Yeah, I just want to thank you for recognizing that. So personal triggers is a big area, and you're already on the road to high emotional intelligence. Because if you can recognize that you have got these triggers, you can do something about it. And then those team dynamics, again, back to, our default responses. We trigger each other. So I'm really encouraged to see those rates as the top highest that you want to work on. And then, flowing on from that, difficult conversations, I think if we get the team dynamics and personal triggers, that automatically helps us with difficult conversations and effective meetings. So thank you very much for participating in this poll. And not only that, for joining the session. So we've covered a lot today. And emotional intelligence isn't just about improving relationships. It's really about creating the foundation for better business outcomes. And leading with EQ helps you build trust, drive this innovation and greater results, and keeping yourself and teams engaged and motivated. So start small, focus on measurable changes, and notice how these shifts can transform your leadership, because we're all leaders in our areas, and also the results. So we have some time. I'd love to hear if there are any questions.
Yes, please share your questions. There's a Q&A function, or drop it into the chat. But one thing that occurred to me, Nicola, is if you actually want someone to create self-awareness, you need to show empathy to that person So to open up that have that coaching conversation with them for them to realize. Probably going all the way back to David's question previously, yes, that process seems to be sequential, but you work through it to help people realize it for themselves and build up their self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that they go hand in hand. Obviously, there's you can only show empathy if you yourself have noticed that there's something going on. So yeah, I think empathy for me is not that I would rank them, but I love that point about, building EQ in others. And empathy is quite foundational. People need to be not agreed with, but they need to be heard and understood. And empathy gives us that.
I've got a question here about any additional education resources on EQ, books, videos, research, frameworks that you would recommend, Nicola?
Oh, yes, tons, but I've gone blank. So how about we share them after, because we are sharing this deck, right, Daniel?
Yes, absolutely,
Yes.
and the video.
Yeah, so how about I share that later with everyone. But also I think I'm still taking questions, but Skills DX, they have a talented assessment which really helps you gain insights into your EQ and also gives you real tangible ways to build your EQ. So in addition to resources, I think this is a great resource.
Great for that self-awareness piece.
Yeah, yeah. So where did you get that question? Because I missed it on the Q&A.
It was on the Q&A session. I just
Oh, the Q&A. I'm looking at the chat. I need to multitask here.
need to, I'm trying to multitask with this.
Okay, got it, got it, got it. Okay, all right.
So I don't believe there's any extra questions coming in, Nicola. So thank you very much for the presentation. I think it really did highlight some tools that you can apply straight away, and the importance of emotional intelligence, like we sort of presented at the start, top 4 skills based on our research. And that's only one piece of research. Every bit of research on the future of skills, future of work skills that you need, EQ is right up there. So really, really important thing to be very cognizant of. Thank you very much, Nicola, and keep filling each other's buckets.
Love that. Thanks very much. And thanks, everyone. Wish I could see you all, but thanks so much for joining. And look, all the best in growing that EQ muscle.
Oh, Nicola, just before we go, one final question. Any experience in dealing with people that really struggle with EQ, people that might have Asperger's syndrome, as an example?
Oh, very good question. So I think that empathy bit is really important in building empathy and safety with that person. And I think so I have to say, I have a few people in my life that I think are on the scale. But in terms of coaching and therapy, not directly. So I don't want to speak out of turn and go, yes, do A, B, and C. I haven't had those people come to me for coaching or therapy. But so I'm not going to answer that directly. But I think that empathy and that real framework is helpful. Because it's around coming to positive outcomes that work for both parties. But yeah, so again, I don't have specific experience that I can give examples, but great question. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Hey, with that, Nicola, thank you very much, and thank you all for joining. Look out in your inboxes for the recording and some extra resources. Have a great
Thanks,
day, everybody.
everyone.